Hello artists, welcome to your Succulents painting class. In front of you, you should have your canvas, a cup of water, a paper towel, a large brush and a small brush. For your colors, you do not have to pour it onto your wax paper. That's for mixing on later. I just poured mine out so you can see the colors a little bit better. But for your colors, you should have light blue, dark green, light green, pink, yellow, and then your black and white. Again, you do not have to pour your colors out onto your wax paper. It's there for mixing later. If you do not have all those materials, not a problem. You're welcome to push pause on the video at any time and come back whenever you're ready. All right, so the first thing we're going to all do is dip our two brushes into our cup of water and stir them nice and get them nice and clean. And gently tap them onto our paper towel. And just remember this throughout the whole class. We are going to wash and then dry when we switch colors, or we're just wanting to clean our brush just so that our paint doesn't drip. So always wash first and then tap dry second to get it nice and clean. On our canvas, we are going to start with painting this planter's pot white. We're going to grab our big brush and just dip it into the container with the white paint. Be sure your paint isn't dripping off of your brush. You can always wipe some off onto your paper towel if you have too much on there. But I'm going to go inside the shape and just kind of drag my small brush and the white paint from left to right. Be sure it's nice and smooth. And if you get some on the pencil line, not a problem. And if the pencil smears, you can always wipe it off onto the paper towel. Just kind of grab it and wipe it off. I'm going to come down on the left side, drag my brush. On the right side, I'm going to come inside the pot and then down here. So I've outlined the pot in white, and now I can go back for more white and just paint the whole thing side to side with my white paint. You can definitely tell the difference between your white on your canvas and the white paint. And also you can tell that the paint is wet, so it's nice and shiny. Side to side, nice long smooth lines. Stay inside that outline. All right, once you are done, you can wash and dry your big brush and put it off to the side. And we're gonna let that dry for a bit before we put any kind of black lines or black decorations or shapes on top of it. Because if we put the black lines on top right now, it would become a gray, but we wanna decorate with black lines a little bit later. And take your time. Again, if you are still working on this, not a problem. You're welcome to push pause on the video. The next thing we're going to do is take our small brush and our light blue paint. So small brush and light blue paint. Again, if it's dripping off of there, you can wipe it off on your paper towel. You don't want too much on there. And we're going to start outlining around our cactus shapes. Be very careful for the blue and the white not to touch. But I'm going to start here on the left, and I'm going to work on the outside of this shape. I'm going to go from here to here, from here to here, and from here to here. And this just lets me know where I want to stop with my light blue background. So again, small brush, light blue, start above the pot, and you have these kind of C shapes on the left side of this cactus. Excuse me, this succulents. And then on the right side, 1, 2, you're gonna go above it. You're gonna go to the right, 1 and 2. I did not outline around this part right here, as you can see, because that's going to be green later on. Once you're done, you can get into this little area right here, this little triangle, and go ahead and fill it in. Once you're done, you can continue outlining above this shape right here. If you got some blue right here, not a problem. We're going to cover it with green a little bit later. Now work to the left, right over here. And work above my outline. Nice, long, smooth lines with my small brush. To the right. I'm going to outline and fill in this little triangle. Outline and fill in that little triangle. Since I have my small brush, I like to go ahead and just get into those smaller areas. I can go back to more light blue with my small brush. I'm going to go out to the right this way and to the left this way. And then I'll work on top of the pencil line. Be sure your white is nice and dry at this point, because you do not want your blue and your white to mix together. Just kind of covering up that pencil line with my blue paint. You might want to give your white another minute or two to dry if it's still pretty wet. So it's pretty much like I've made a bubble around my succulents and pot. All right. Once you're done, you can just kind of put your small brush to the side and grab your big brush and dip it into the container with a light blue. And then we're going to paint all this background space. Avoid any of your plant life or the pot. And I'm just going to move my brush in an up and down motion. So my big brush, light blue, nice long brush strokes. Again, do your best to avoid painting anything in the pot area or your plant life. Just kind of dragging that brush, making sure everything looks nice and smooth, no bumps. In a moment, we'll be painting the 4 sides as well. Kind of working my way to the left. Can go underneath the pot down here. Start the line and just kind of work my way down. And again, be very careful not to paint past those blue lines. And later on, after this dries a little bit, I'll go back and give it a second coat. The second coat is going to make it a little bit more solid. You won't be able to see the white canvas in the background as much, but I definitely want to give it a couple minutes of drying time, and during that time I'll just be painting the four sides, and then I'll come back and paint right over the blue once it's dry and not so shiny. Again, if you need to use your smaller brush to get into those smaller areas, you can. I've avoided 1, 2, 3, 4 of those areas. And then I'm going to start painting my four sides. I can just lift up my canvas, or I can kind of leave it flat on the table and turn my canvas. Just be very careful. And on the bottom of my canvas, I'm painting side to side. And if you're still working on the front, no problem. So whenever you're done, you can continue on to the four sides. Paint the left side, and I'm going to just work my way up and down. Paint the right side in an up and down motion. And the top, side to side. So the four sides are painted. I'm going to give the top part maybe a minute or two to dry, and I'll go back and give it another coat. I did notice earlier that I do have a little splash of black paint on my canvas. This is kind of like an easy trick, but you can take your finger or your small brush, just be sure everything is nice and clean. Dip it into your white paint, just kind of white it out, and then once the white's dry, you can paint whatever color you want on top of it. So just as a little trick, I'm going to use my white paint to white out that splatter of black paint that I saw on my canvas. Take your time with the four sides, take your time with the front area. Give it 2 or 3 minutes to dry, and then you can go back, and it's much easier the second time around with your light blue background. Your paint is still moving a lot and it's hard to have that second coat sit on top of the first coat, just give it a little bit longer to dry. Make sure the first coat isn't as shiny and wet, a little bit more dry, and then you can lay that second coat on top a little bit easier. You can definitely see a big difference between second coat and first coat. It definitely looks a whole lot cleaner the second time around. Go underneath here too. You can also give the 4 sides another coat as well. Be sure you don't have any big bumps. And take your time. Again, you're always welcome to pause the video, but in a couple minutes I'm going to show you the next step. You do want to make sure that both of your brushes are nice and clean for the next step once you're done. Again, take your time with your background, then you can wash and dry your brushes. Since I have a lot of blue on my brushes, I'm not going to just pat them, I'm actually just going to wrap them around with my paper towel, so all sides are all the way around. The gold is nice and clean. My bristles are nice and clean too. Again, you don't have to be done, and in just a moment I'm going to move on to our greenery. Once you're done with your background, and again, if you're not a problem, you're going to go back to your big brush and you're going to dip it into the container with a light green paint, and you are going to outline and fill in the center succulents with the light green. And I would do 2 coats of this light green. Be very careful if you have any shiny blue paint anywhere near this green. Might want to give it another minute or 2 to dry. And I am going over my pencil line because I don't want to see it. So I'm going to make sure that blue is nice and dry. And then I'm gonna even drag my big brush from side to side. So I've outlined the shape. And then I'm just gonna move my brush a little bit of a diagonal, a little bit more up and down, a little bit more of a diagonal, a little bit more of a diagonal, and fill in the whole thing. So you want the whole thing to be painted this lime green. Go over your outline just a little bit so you don't see that harsh line. But again, you're just gonna brush in that paint in the direction that each section is kind of pointing. This is all with my, with my big brush and my light lime green paint. I don't want any white peeking through. I'm gonna give us another minute to dry, and I'll go back over it with a second coat. So outline and fill in with your limey green or light green paint. Usually I would probably give it a little bit longer, but for the video's sake, I'm gonna just go over it the second coat. Make sure you're staying inside those lines. You can always go back and outline the shape if it got a little bit messy. But again, at least 2 if you wanted. Even you can do 3 coats of this lighter lime green. And once you're done, you do not have to clean your brush. We're going to be using this lime green. One more time. Again, if you wanted to, you can still go back and give it a 3rd coat. Just give it another minute or 2 to dry. If it still looks shiny, give it another minute or so, and it'll be easier to lay another coat on top of it. But once you're done, you don't have to clean your big brush. You're going to go back into your container with your lime green, grab a scoop, find a nice clean area on your wax paper. So a scoop of lime green, then I'm going to wash and dry my big brush and get a scoop of that darker green, put it right on top and mix the 2. So scoop of lime green, wash your brush, dry your brush, scoop of dark green, then mix. This is onto your wax paper. And once you're done mixing, you can just kind of clean off the sides so you don't have any big chunks of paint after mixing your colors. And over here to my left, I'm gonna do the same thing that I did with my plant in the middle. I'm gonna outline and fill in. I go over the pencil line. So this is gonna be your light and then my medium green. So it has a little bit of light green and a little bit of the darker green working together. This is with my big brush after I wiped it off so I don't have too much paint on there. And be careful of any shiny blue spots. Going to the left of this line. And then once I'm done outlining that funny shape, and I can just go in there again, kind of in the direction that it's sitting. So this is going to be a little bit more diagonal with my brush, a bit more up and down. This area is a little bit more up and down. And again, I would do 2 coats of this medium green. And if you need to make more of a mix, just remember your recipe is 1 scoop of light green and 1 scoop of dark green. And the outer edges are a little bit curvy, so I notice whenever I get closer to them, I am curving my brush just a little bit. On this side, just kind of work with the shape. But again, moving it in an up and down direction, but just a little bit curvy. Once you're done, again, give it a minute or 2 to dry, and then you can go back with another coat. And once I'm done giving this another coat, I'll go and wash my brush and paint this last one all green. So that'll be my darkest plant. So light, medium, and dark. And again, since we're videoing, I'm just going to go over this, give it another coat, but I would genuinely wait another minute or so before I went on top of this medium green one more time. Alright, and once I'm done, I can wash and dry my big brush. So big brush, dark green in the container, just dip it in there, make sure it's not dripping off of your brush. And you're gonna go on top of your pencil line so you can cover it up. And this dark green is pretty thin, so if you wanted to, you could do 2 or 3 coats. The more coats you give it, the darker it's gonna become, and also the less of the white canvas you'll see underneath it. And again, give it a couple minutes between each coat of paint. Nice long lines. Go all the way around, and then you can fill in with your big brush and that dark green paint. I'm just kind of going in the direction of each section of the plant. Get nice and filled in. And again, you can see all these streaky lines, but if I give my cactus or my succulents a little bit more time to dry, I can go back and give it another coat. Do the same to the other 2. I think I'm going to go back and kind of touch them up as well. Maybe give this one some more drying time before I go back. I'll wash and dry this brush really well, and I'll go back and touch these 2 up and give that some more time to dry. It's really a thin paint. If you're doing the same thing, Going back and painting this one limey green. If you feel like yours is already nice and clean and you don't want to go back, not a problem. Just want to kind of show you the difference between each coat. This is my third coat of this one, so it's pretty thin. I'm going to take a scoop of lime green, maybe 2 scoops, just so I have more than enough. I'm going to wash and dry my brush and add 2 scoops of dark green. 1, 2. Then wipe off the sides and go back and give it another coat. While I'm waiting for this one to dry, because I can still tell that it's really wet. And I wanted to go back and kind of touch these up. And once I'm done adding the green to all 3 plants, I'm going to start decorating my pot with my small brush and my black paint. A lot of lines, a lot of shapes, some dots, really simple. Wash and dry. And work on that last green one. And that's just that dark green with my big brush. So a little of a touch up before I go in there and decorate the pot. I think again I might go back and give this a 3rd coat. Make sure it looks nice and clean. I can still see a lot of those streaky lines. I want to make sure I have nice dark green on there. Give this one a little bit longer to dry, and I'll go back and I'll give it a 3rd coat. But once you're done getting 1, 2, and 3 done, you can wash and dry your brush. And again, I think I'm going to go back and give that one a 3rd coat, but it definitely does need some extra drying time. And the next thing I'm going to do is use my small brush and my black paint to decorate the pot. Again, the line work is super simple. you're using your small brush and your black paint. Always remember, the harder you push, the thicker your line becomes. So you just want to be on the tippy toes of your brush, barely push down on it. You can always take your fingers and just kind of bring it to a point as well. The first thing I'm going to do on my pot is make a line going from left to right. It's going to be a little bit past the middle area. So the middle of my pot is right about here. I'm going to come down a little bit lower. Let me show you how. So about the center right here, I'm going to come down just a little bit lower. I'll put a dot right there. And the best that I can do, I'm going to drag it and make a long line from one side to the other. And be sure not to pass the white. Go back the other direction. I'm going to start off the edge right here and drag my small brush. Remember, I'm just on the tippy toe. Don't push too hard, and I'll go all the way to the other side. Nice long movements with my small brush. This is the halfway point, just a little bit lower. Once you're done, you can go back to your small brush and your black paint. A little bit of space between the two. But all you're going to be doing is making zigzags, going up and down, and again, you are just barely pushing on your small brush. You keep it going until you are out of paint, all the way from one side to the next, and you can come back and give that black paint a second coat. Like so. Even ended on a black line right there. Just a little bit of black paint all the way from one side to the next. Once you're done, the next step is kind of tricky, but I'm going to break it down so it becomes a little bit easier. But between each point of the zigzag, you're going to come up from the line, just make a line. So from here to here, make a line from here to here, almost like little minus signs. Be sure to leave a little bit of distance between your long line, these little mini lines. Again, they kind of go between those 2 points. I'm going to take this all the way from one side. Maybe a little bit of this one right here. Once I'm done with those minus signs, I'm going to make a rainbow shape on each one of them. Just come up just a little bit, not too much. Then later on, I'll go in there and fill them in. Just a little bit of a rainbow shape on each one. So minus signs, rainbows, and then you can use your small brush to fill in. You can just barely push on your small brush. If you lost the shape of any of them, you can go back and outline it and clean it up. Take your time with those shapes. But once you're done, between each kind of fun shape, we're going to put a diamond. So let me show you how. If you want to wash your brush and get it a little bit wet again and wipe it off onto your paper towel and even bring it to a point, you can. Get it nice and ready for the diamond shape. Again, be very careful because the harder you push, the thicker the line becomes. I'm going to come down just a little bit from the top. Make a diamond shape. So it's kind of like a V, an upside down V. Have half of one right here. Again, between these two, a V shape. Go back for a little bit more black and an upside down V shape. Just kind of continue this diamond shape all the way across between each one of our previous shapes. I think my small brush had its last day. It's super fuzzy. I have half of one on this side. Go back and make those lines a little bit thicker. Go back and give some of these areas of black another coat. I'm going to do one last thing on the pot before I start adding any detail to my plants above. One last thing I'm going to do, in the pot area, I'm going to take the back of my small brush and dip it into my black paint, so the container with the black paint. Be sure you don't have too much on there. You can always take off a little bit if you need to. But underneath each diamond shape, you leave a little bit of a space and create a dot. So the back of my small brush, not the front but the back, or not the part with the bristles but the back, I'm going to come down just a little bit. And the harder you push, the bigger the dot becomes. So be sure you're pretty consistent. They're all about the same size dots all the way across. And let's say one of your black lines got a little bit away from you. You can always let that black dry and go back and add some white to it to white it out, just kind of like how I did before with the black drip. I'm going to go in and then clean these up just a little bit. But you have the line from the left to the right, you have your zigzag. You have kind of these like rainbow shapes with the minus signs underneath them. You have your diamond shapes where it's kind of like a V and an upside down V shape. Once you're done, you can wash and dry with a small brush. Now that this green's a little bit more dry, I'm going to go back with my big brush and my green paint. This is my dark green, and give this one more coat, and I think that should do it much, much better. Go ahead and keep working on your pot, and again, if you want to go back to your green, give it another coat, you can. In just a moment, we'll start adding the little needles and the little flowers and be finishing up on our plants. Make sure my brushes are nice and clean because I'm going to white. Again, you can wrap them around with your paper towel. Alright, once you're done with your pot, once you're done with your greens for your plants, you are going to go to your small brush and dip it into your container with the white paint. Tap some off onto your paper towel because you just want a little on there. And kind of close to the outside of my center succulents, I'm going to go in there and start at this point. I'm going to sweep down with a little bit of a curve, sweep down with a little bit of a curve. Let me show you again. So on the top, I'm going to sweep down. This is just kind of working with the curve of the succulent. So white, tap it off onto your paper towel. Come down just a little bit more. White, tap it off. Start at the point, curve this way on this side, and curve this way on this side with that shape. Go down just a little bit further. There's that one right there. And go back and clean it up if you need to. So start at the point, work with this curve, and then work with that curve. So at the top, this way, top, this way, top, this way, that way. For this one, it's really fun. All you do is make a point, and this is for the needles, and it could be anywhere on there. They're very random, and you can go to the left and to the right, just kind of like a sweep. Makes a V shape, and in the middle, you can kind of just sweep up. The little sweeps, you want to keep them nice and mini. Let me show you another one. Make a dot right here. I'm going to sweep to the left. I'm going to sweep to the right. I'm going to sweep right in the middle. And make another one. Up here, make a dot. I'm going to sweep to the left. It's going to go on top of the blue. Sweep to the right, and then sweep up in the middle. Not too much. Make a dot. Left, right, where you're making that V shape. And then go up right in the middle. Dot right here. Left, right in the middle. You're gonna do this several more times. Make a dot right here, left, right, right in the middle. And the one right here, left, right, one in the middle, and that one's kind of pointing more that way. Make a dot. I'm going to go to the left, to the right, one in the middle. And one more. I'm going to make a dot right here. Left, right, one in the middle. That one does kind of go into the blue a little bit as well. This green right here is super easy. It's kind of like how we did the dots down here. We're going to use the back of our small brush, dip it into the white paint, and just kind of like a stamp. Again, we're going to go down the middle. Be sure your green is pretty dry. If it's still pretty wet, maybe give it some more time to dry. You can go back for more if you need to. And you're just barely pushing, not too much. You're going to go all the way down with spaces between each one of those dots. So that's your first area of dots. It's like the little needles on this cactus. Then on the right, the same thing. They don't have to be lined up. They can kind of be off, so one can be higher and lower than the one to the left of it. But I want to go from top to bottom. And sometimes I'm pushing a little bit harder, sometimes I'm pushing a little bit lighter. I'm going to do the same thing on the left. And come all the way down. Another row or two right there. And then same thing with these kind of the arms of this cactus, but I'm going to be a little bit more slanted. So I'm going to start in the middle. Make that one. I'll go over to the right and the left and make more dots. So pretty much what I did, that center area, I'll be doing over on the left and the right. This one kind of dips up like the letter J, so I'll start in the middle. Can have some larger, some smaller. Come up. And I'll go above it and below it. So let's go to the right, make those dots. I'm going to go above it and make that J shape with the dots again. I'm going to let those areas of white dry a little bit. While I'm waiting for those to dry, I do want to make sure I don't have any shiny black areas right here, but like I said before, you can use your white paint to kind of touch up any areas of black you want to kind of clean up with white paint, which is pretty much like a whiteout. Be very careful of any shiny black paint because that'll become a gray. It's a good way to kind of clean up those lines, and I have really wobbly hands, so this is a good way for me to clean up my line work. Just kind of letting that top part dry while I touch up my line work right down here. Again, be sure everything's nice and dry. Just kind of erasing with white paint. one more minute, and then I'm going to start adding my flowers. And my flowers, I'll just be using my small brush. Cleaning up this area, being very careful of my white paint. Making sure the top of my diamond shapes are nice and pointy and clean. If you're all caught up, you're welcome to go ahead and join us for the next step for the flowers. But if you're still working on any of the other parts of your painting, again, take your time. But be sure your brush is really nice and clean. And again, your small brush, you might want to even wrap it around with your paper towel. We're going to be starting with our lightest flower, which is our yellow. With our yellow paint, we're going to take our small brush and just dip it into the yellow. Our first flower is going to be kind of like a sun shape. So we're going to make a dot and make sun rays all the way around. So I'm going to have one flower right here. I'm going to make a dot. And kind of like I had before, but I'm going to go all the way around with my yellow. Be careful if your white's still wet. I'm going to make another one. Right here, I'm going to make a dot. Then starting at that dot, I'm going to go out like sun rays and making a nice full flower all the way around. And again, if you wanted to do 2 coats of this yellow, you can to make it a little bit brighter. You'll just have to let it dry and go back and give it another coat, a dot. Then I'm going to start from the dot and go all the way around. Make sure it's nice and full. And then I'm going to have one more up here, just on the kind of rounded area. I'm going to go all the way around like sun rays. Make sure it's nice and full. Like so. There are no flowers in the center one right here. Be sure your white dots are nice and dry. But we're mostly working on the upper area, not on top of that cactus shape. But I'm going to add a yellow dot right here. But I'm not going to go all the way around. I'm just going to do the top half. So that shape right there. Another one here to the right. I'm going to make a dot. Go half, don't go all the way around. So that second one, and your last one is over here to the right. Can I go a little bit more up? That one, and again, you can always go back after a minute or two and give these ones another coat. Make sure they're nice and dry before you go back on top of them. Go all the way around. It'll make them brighter. You won't see the green behind the yellow as much. And next will be our pink. With our small brush, and these are again for our flowers, our florals. These ones are only going up. And if the paint is still moving too much, maybe give it another minute or two to move. Or excuse me, to give it another coat. Again, take your time, but once you're done, you can wash and dry your small brush. We're gonna work on our pink flowers, and there are no pink flowers on this one, only on this one. And again, this one does not have any flowers. Small brush, pink paint. Same shape as these ones. Make a dot over here to the right. I'm just gonna go up, kind of to the right. Over here to the left, I'm gonna make a dot. Start over here and go all the way to this side, from left to right, but do not go all the way around. Dot. And my last pink one, I'm gonna make a dot. Like so. You don't have to clean your brush, but on the back of your small brush, be sure you don't have any wet paint. But you're going to take the back of your small brush and dip it into the pink. And the centers of your yellow flowers, maybe make sure they're a little more dry. Maybe give them another minute or so. But all you're doing is just kind of pushing up and down, just kind of creating little dots in the center of each one of those yellow flowers. The back of my small brush, dip into the pink, and again, just like a stamp, maybe anywhere from 4 to 6 dots. You can push a little bit harder for bigger dots, push a little bit softer for smaller dots. Be sure that yellow has another maybe minute or so to dry, so it's not too wet. But all you're doing is just kind of jumping up and down like a stamp to create those dots. Caught some of my yellow paint, but I'm gonna show you guys. Again, maybe give yours another minute, and then you can start putting like 4 to 6 little dots in the center of your flowers. Then you can wipe off the back. There's one more little mini step. Be sure to clean off the pink off of both sides of your small brush. But with my small brush, I'm going to go in with my white paint. And on the tips of this one and this one, there is some white. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to sweep some white in the center. So I'm just going to kind of go towards the center with my white paint. So start a little bit off and then kind of go towards the center and stop right there. In the middle, you don't want to go all the way down. Let me show you again. This one does not have any white, it's just this one and this one. So again, small brush, white paint. I'm going to come out a little bit further and sweep in towards the middle. Don't pass the middle, because you still want to see that pink on the bottom area. I'm just going to sweeping in little choppy short movements. Right. And there you have it. Again, if you want to go back and touch anything up, you absolutely can. Just be aware of wet colors, because if you have a wet color and another wet color touches it, they are going to mix. So sometimes you just have to wait for your colors to dry before you put one on top of it or next to it. Otherwise, we are done with painting our white pot, painting our blue background, painting our light, medium, and dark green plant life, going back and doing the decorations, and then going back and doing all the detail that lies on top. All right, artists, take your time if you are still working on it. Be sure it looks great. Thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you soon.